As the legal fight between actors and former co-stars Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively is heating up, we're going to do two things. One, we're going to focus on the public support for Justin Baldoni, and two, Lively says she'll give a deposition in this case, but not with Baldoni's lawyer. We'll break all that down for you right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law&Crime legal alert. So the Los Angeles wildfires are still making an impact. It's estimated that these wildfires caused more than $250 billion worth of damage. The loss of life is just immeasurable. But there are reports that insurance companies canceled thousands of homeowners' fire policies in the months before the wildfires. Were those cancellations even legal? Will insurance be able to help people recover all that they've lost? Well, I'll tell you what, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, they're here to help. They were there for the Northern California wildfires. They were there in Maui, and now they're here for you and the families affected by these horrific fires. So if you've lost loved ones, your home, business, property, because of the Los Angeles wildfires, you can visit www.forthepeople.com/LCFire, and you may be entitled to significant compensation. All right, so a large portion of this episode is going to be dedicated more specifically to those people who are supporting Justin Baldoni in his legal saga against actress Blake Lively. And I got to say, one of the reasons that we're doing this is because after we posted an episode earlier in the week about celebrity reactions to the Baldoni-Lively case, we got a ton of blowback. There were people online, the commenters, saying that we're in Lively's camp, that we're supporting her, we're doing her bidding. First of all, that just shows to me maybe you didn't actually watch the full episode, because in that episode, in addition to the celebrities who are supporting or seem to be supporting Blake Lively, we also included people who are supporting or seem to be supporting Baldoni. And it just so happens that we're hearing more high-profile voices in Hollywood for her right now than we are for him. And I didn't include other people. There was, comments from Gwyneth Paltrow. There was a comment from Amy Schumer. But we try to present both sides here. We try to do that in every story that we cover. And we presented, by the way, when it came to Justin Baldoni, his counter-arguments to her claims. And that's not because we support him or we support her. We don't support either of them. We're trying to present both sides. We dedicate episodes to full breakdowns of her lawsuit, full breakdowns of his lawsuit. So we have been presenting the arguments and the evidence against both. That's what you need to do to have an intellectual conversation about this. So look, I'm not judging who you support in this or not. But what I will say is no matter who you support, you should know what the other side will argue. Potentially at trial. Any good lawyer does that. You gotta be prepared for the counter arguments. We're trying to break down the law and the facts here. We're trying to call balls and strikes, and that's what we think that you all deserve, and that's what you've come to expect. So with that in mind, if you believe that we didn't show enough of his side in that prior episode, we're about to do it now. And by the way, from a legal point of view, it seems to me this is very, very important, because the reaction, whether it's from Hollywood stars or the public, is important. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think a fair argument for why Lively initially filed her complaint and why Baldoni is fighting back, and his lawyer, Brian Friedman, has been making public comments about the case and has released evidence that could potentially be used in the case, is to reverse the public narrative, to win over public sentiment, to rehabilitate their careers. I believe that's one of the main reasons we're seeing this happen, and why we actually may see a settlement in this case and it not go to trial. If you're Justin Baldoni and you can settle the case and rehabilitate your image after being called a sexual harasser, I think that could be a win. The same thing for Blake Lively. If she files this complaint where she was receiving all of this negative press and negative attention, and she says, no, there's a reason for that. I was the victim of a smear campaign. Then it reverses the narrative and it rehabilitates her image, and they might settle it. So the reaction from the public, the reaction from co-stars, the reaction from Hollywood, very important for their livelihoods and their careers, and also the legal consequences. Will this go to trial? Will this settle? Okay. So here's a quick recap of how we got here. At the end of December, after the movie It Ends With Us had its press tour and arguably some alleged PR flubs by Blake Lively, she filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department, the first step to taking her claims to court. And Lively has accused Justin Baldoni of engaging in repeated misconduct, including sexual harassment on the set of this movie. Now, Baldoni was her co-star, he was the director, and she claims that he and a team of executives and crisis management and PR experts devised a smear campaign in the media, on social media, to retaliate against her when she first tried to bring up her claims on set. And Baldoni has been adamant that those claims are false. He says that Lively's complaint, which eventually became a federal lawsuit, left out critical details that would provide more context to the situations that she's talking about. He says she just cherry-picked messages to make him look really, really bad. And Baldoni also says that Lively weaponized false allegations against him to leverage her control over the movie. He also accuses her of using the power and influence of her husband, actor Ryan Reynolds, and superstar best friend Taylor Swift to pressure him into accepting her revisions to a key scene in the movie. And then he claims she boxed him out, made other changes, insisted her version be the one seen by the public, turned the cast against him, and wouldn't allow him to attend the premiere of his film. He says he and his family were forced to sit in the basement of the movie theater during the premiere. By the way, Baldoni also filed a $250 million lawsuit against the New York Times for their article, "We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine." He says they took all of Lively's claims as true in her California complaint, didn't look any further into her claims, and didn't give Baldoni and his team time to respond before publishing that this was a one-sided, sloppy narrative. Now, before we dive into who in particular may be coming to Baldoni's defense, I do have to talk about a brand new development in the Ends With Us legal drama. Or, by the way, as a Slate headline put it, it never ends with us. I thought that was clever. Anyway, before we get into the support for Baldoni, something else we got to talk about. So we've learned about the timeline of this civil case over the last few days. And the parties involved, Blake Lively, her husband Ryan Reynolds, her publicist Leslie Sloan, Justin Baldoni, his production company Wayfarer Studios, and more, have now submitted a case management plan to the judge. And they're expected in federal court in New York on Monday. We're planning to cover it because there are no cameras in federal court, but we're going to have a reporter there. We're going to do our best to provide you live commentary and live updates as they happen on Law&Crime's YouTube channel, so I hope everybody can check it out. So ahead of Monday's initial hearing, what are known as the Wayfarer parties, so those in Baldoni's camp, they raised an issue that they say they want to address. Quote, during a conference of the parties' counsel on January 30th, 2025, counsel for the Wayfarer parties requested the earliest possible deposition of Blake Lively. Counsel for Miss Lively and Ryan Reynolds stated their objection to the Wayfarer party's lead counsel conducting the deposition of Blake Lively. Specifically, the Lively party's counsel indicated that they object to Brian J. Friedman personally taking Miss Lively's deposition based upon unspecified statements made by Mr. Friedman. When asked to elaborate on the grounds for their objection, counsel for the Lively parties declined to do so. Counsel for Miss Lively has made clear that Miss Lively does not want Mr. Friedman to be the attorney who takes her deposition. We are unaware of any situation that would warrant the deposed party to have a choice in which attorney takes her deposition. Parties to litigation simply do not have the right to dictate which of their opponent's attorneys may or may not take their deposition or perform any other aspect of the opposing party's case. The Wayfarer parties respectfully submit that this important issue should be discussed at the initial pretrial conference. So we're going to see what Judge Louis J. Lyman has to say about that on Monday, but also not surprised that we're seeing this given his very public statements and comments in the media about Blake Lively and this case and why she may not want him to depose her. I mean, for example, he told Us Weekly recently when Lively and her side were trying to have the court stop him from making public comments about the case, he said, quote, the irony is not lost on anyone that Miss Lively is so petrified of the truth that she has moved to gag it. He went on to say the immense power that she wielded in Hollywood, built on pure fear of her husband and their powerful friends, came to an end the moment Miss Lively planned a mass distribution of a disturbingly false and well-calculated hit piece in the New York Times. So the Lively parties have also indicated that they plan to move to have this complaint dismissed. They want the case thrown out. In response, Brian Friedman, again, Baldoni's attorney, stated to Deadline, all these motions to dismiss are just yet another attempt by Miss Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Leslie Sloan to hide and delay the discovery of the hundreds of pages of true facts and well-documented information that we remain dedicated to providing publicly with full transparency. We expect such motions to be denied, and in the meantime, stand ready to oppose each and every one of them. Now, I am going to present to you, with all that in mind, those in support of Justin Baldoni. And this is actually really important. Why? Because it's critical to understand how his side of the story could potentially be backed up by third parties. Now, whether those third parties are objective, that remains to be seen. And it also does become a legal question of would they testify? Would it be relevant for them to testify? But look, if there are accusations of Lively was difficult to work with, will we hear from her former co-stars? If there are allegations that this is a pattern of Baldoni on film sets, if you take Lively's allegations as true, and to be clear, it hasn't been asserted that that's the case, that there is a pattern, or even if his character is an issue and he wants to defend himself and bring on other co-stars of his, that may be what happens. You can see how that would play out. But I will tell you first, in terms of people actually defending him in this, we got to start with Megyn Kelly. So on her SiriusXM podcast, The Megyn Kelly Show, she went after Blake Lively, particularly after the release of that montage video of Lively and Baldoni dancing. His team released that to show that he wasn't being creepy, as Blake Lively alleged, but all of his actions that were called out by Lively, they were explainable. How she was mischaracterizing their interactions in that scene. Now, she has come out and said that video actually proves her point that she wasn't comfortable. But here's what Megyn Kelly said, quote, "Time and time again, she accuses him of doing something, which then you hear the full context is an absolute nothing burger." She went on to say, "She alleges that she's a Me Too victim. That's absurd. This person is not an honest broker. I believe her less than ever. I actually disbelieve her fully." And she accused Blake Lively of cooperating with the New York Times to release all of these allegations. Kelly said, now that she's had her shot against him and she's severely damaged him, now she wants a complete gag order. And she argued that Baldoni wasn't responsible for all the negative press and attention that she was getting. Remember, Blake Lively says that it was his smear campaign that caused all of that negative reaction in the public and the media against her during the press tour and the premiere of It Ends With Us. No, Megyn Kelly says it's Blake Lively's fault. It's Blake Lively's fault that her public image took a lashing because, quote, she turned out to be not a very nice person. And with respect to the montage scene where he is nuzzling into her and they're talking about their personal lives, again, they're supposed to be on camera as two lovers having a good time. He also said, I wasn't inappropriate commenting on how good she smells, but I just was responding to when she mentioned the smell of her tanner. That's why I said smells so good or smells good. So Megyn Kelly says in response to that montage video, she's completely flirtatious with him and he's flirtatious back, but they're talking about each other's spouses and it's all in good fun. She laughs and says, oh, did you get beard on me? She doesn't say, oh my God, you nuzzled me and said that I smell good. Okay, now one thing to note, Megyn Kelly is actually represented by Brian Friedman, Baldoni's attorney, who released that montage clip. So take that for what you will. And with that in mind, pop culture and gossip commentator Perez Hilton, another Brian Friedman client, also jumped into the ring. And to be clear, I'm not saying that they're taking Justin Baldoni's side or going against Blake Lively because of their relationship with Brian Friedman, but I just have to call that out. He also jumped into the ring, though, Perez Hilton, and he publicly came out and called Blake Lively B-list, a B-list actress, and called her out, or called out her lawyers, more specifically, for trying to stop Brian Friedman from making public comments about the case. Hilton said, what he's doing is not any different than what any other attorney does. This is standard practice. Another Brian Friedman client, sports commentator and journalist Sage Steele, has come out and said in a video on YouTube that she is disgusted with the New York Times, that they have thrown out their journalistic integrity out the window, that they were inaccurate and incomplete and literally chose to omit key evidence from the story. And she added that as a woman, words matter. And she says Lively is abusing her power and how that ends up hurting other women and discredits other women. So some very strong positions there against Blake Lively. Now, another personality speaking out in support of Baldoni, is somebody who we mentioned in our prior sidebar, is right-wing controversial commentator Candace Owens. Originally, Owens posted on X, hear me out, what if rather than believing women or men, we waited for more facts and allowed Justin Baldoni to have his day in court before stripping him of awards, because he was stripped of almost a humanitarian award for his work speaking out on the cause of women. But then she did something else. So she shared a clip on her live stream, her political show, Candace, of Baldoni's lawyer, Brian Friedman, defending him on NBC. And Owens remarked, now, I like Brian Friedman. He seems like a tiger, and I could just tell he's telling the truth. Mommy intuition. As for what she had to say about Blake Lively, well, she seemed to take a jab at her too, commenting, "The vibes are not vibing here for her." Now, sticking with people on the right, although not to a level of a Candace Owens, we have commentator Brett Cooper, who previously worked for the Daily Wire, and she took to the platform X to share her thoughts on the attempts from Lively's team to gag or maybe silence. Blake Lively's team has said it's not a gag order, to try to stop Justin Baldoni's team from saying anything. But she said, look, you employ gag orders when you have something to hide. Unfortunately, they are too late to the party. Justin was smart to get everything out in the open before they started to come after him like this. The ability to speak and defend oneself is the most dangerous threat to people like BL and RR, meaning Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Now, there's also somebody else I want to talk about. There is a journalist who has become quite infamous in this saga, has entered the fray of all of this Hollywood drama. And you might know who this is because she conducted a now infamous 2016 interview with Blake Lively that has since resurfaced amidst all this It Ends With Us drama. And that is, and I apologize for mispronouncing her name, Christy Fla, a Norwegian journalist who became caught in the crossfire after she made waves with a viral video that she posted to her YouTube channel titled "The Blake Lively Interview That Made Me Want to Quit My Job." Now, for those of you who missed it, the viral video featured, I could say tense, I could say awkward, I could say uncomfortable exchange between her and Lively from a 2016 interview. So in the clip, Fla, who congratulated the pregnant Lively on her little bump, was met with a very sharp retort from the actress. Lively immediately responded, "Congrats on your little bump," despite the fact that Fla was not pregnant. So this interaction, minor as it was, quickly became the flashpoint for a barrage of criticism against Blake Lively on social media, where she was dubbed a mean girl. Now, Fla was mentioned in the article that was published by the New York Times too, that she says insinuated her involvement in the alleged smear campaign against Blake Lively, which Fla pushed back on. She has said she had no coordination or conversations with Baldoni's team, saying it is shocking that such a respected newspaper, meaning the New York Times, would publish a damaging conspiracy theory without contacting me for comment. This lack of due diligence has not only hurt my reputation, but has also deeply affected me on a personal level. But then she took aim at Lively and Lively's actions, raising serious questions about her true stance on women's support, because Fla pointed out that Lively was involved in Cafe Society, a film directed by Woody Allen. This is despite his long history of accusations of sexual abuse. Fla said everyone knew about these accusations. And according to her, Lively's decision to work with Allen, despite the abuse allegation, shows a troubling disregard for the victims of sexual abuse. She argues that Lively either didn't believe Farrow's accusations or simply chose to ignore them in favor of her career, saying Blake Lively didn't support another woman who came forward. Now, there is a ton of social media personalities and online commentators who have taken Justin Baldoni's side. There's also those who support Blake Lively. But I will tell you what is also interesting is the reaction not necessarily to these lawsuits per se, but more about Justin Baldoni in general. Like, we have his former co-star, Gina Rodriguez, who he worked closely with on Jane the Virgin. The two apparently remained very close through the years, and Baldoni even officiated Rodriguez's wedding to her husband in 2019. In a post about the nuptials on Instagram, Rodriguez called him her, quote, soul brother. And in a recent interview with People magazine, Rodriguez called Baldoni her, quote, brother forever, and said he is, quote, hands down the person I stay in touch with the most, from the Jane the Virgin cast. Now, that was back in September of last year, so this is after the premiere of It Ends With Us. There were already rumors of problems on the set between Baldoni and Blake Lively and with the cast, but this was before Blake Lively's official complaint. Just want to be clear about the timing there. But Baldoni did say of Rodriguez at the time when she made the comments that she really showed up for me. That was really sweet. And that's a significant statement on his part, because in light of what we're learning from both sides right now, whether you believe his version of events or you believe Blake Lively's version of events, for him to say that Rodriguez showed up for him, you can see why that meant a lot to him at that time. Now, fellow Jane the Virgin co-stars Yael Groblis and Brett Deer gave It Ends With Us rave reviews after seeing the movie in theaters on August 23rd. Groblis posted a selfie with Deer saying, our genius friend Justin Baldoni made a phenomenal film. I cried an embarrassing amount and tried to hide it, but probably failed. I am so proud of you, and I love you, friend. And even Deer's ex-fiancée, Haley Lou Richardson, who was cast by Baldoni in the 2019 film 5 Feet Apart, expressed her support for the actor. In an interview with Access Hollywood, she recalled, "I've known Justin for a while and watched this viral marriage proposal video to his wife, Emily, as my introduction. Brett came home and was like, 'This guy is too good to be true. I like him, but you have to watch this.' First, I was like, 'Okay, Justin,' but then I actually got into it and cried a lot." Okay, so women who have worked with Baldoni on film and TV projects, on screen and off, have also shared their own personal experiences with Justin Baldoni on social media. Take a look.
I did work on It Ends With Us for a little while, so I just want to say Justin Baldoni is a wonderful human who cares a lot and very strongly about this type of subject matter, about domestic abuse, and he was very caring, considerate, and compassionate.
Once I got in there, I just felt so welcome, and honestly, he just made me feel like family and a part of their entire team, and it was just overall such a good experience.
Like, the guy did not have ego. He didn't have, he was never a diva about anything. Like, he was a joy to work with, and like handsome, smart, like talented. Did not at all strike me as somebody who was playing into the ridiculousness, the bureaucracy, like the insanity of, even though, again, he was like starring in this movie, and granted it was a small film, but he didn't play into that. He just couldn't have been more cool to work with.
And an actress named Tia Streety had this to say in a comment on Instagram that we believe was in December, so this is after the filing of Blake Lively's complaint. "I worked with him on Jane the Virgin, had a kissing scene with him. When I tell you, he was the most respectful, down-to-earth actor I've worked with. He talked about his wife, made me feel extra comfortable, and was overall an amazing human being. This is just my story. Not to say any of this is true or untrue, but this is just my personal account of working with him." And while this one that I'm about to talk about may not necessarily be support of Justin Baldoni, one of Blake Lively's relatives actually issued an apology. Let me explain. So Bart Johnson, who famously played Coach Bolton in the High School Musical franchise, has been married to Blake Lively's older sister, Robin, and he is close with the entire Lively family. Johnson says that Lively's father actually gave him a job teaching his teenage acting class, and that he first met and started working with Blake, that they've been close ever since. When Lively filed her complaint against Baldoni out in California, Johnson took to Instagram. He wrote a comment on an Instagram post from the New York Times about that article covering the Lively complaint. And he wrote, "Her complaints were filed during the filming, on record long before the public conflict. The cast unfollowed him for a reason," meaning the fact that the cast unfollowed Justin Baldoni on social media. "Read this article before spitting ignorance. No one is without faults, but the public got played," meaning the public who saw all this negative press attention against Blake Lively. That, again, the allegation was that was all Justin Baldoni and his team's doing, the smear campaign. Then he later posted on X, again formerly Twitter, appearing to reference Baldoni, saying he's a fraud, he puts on the costume of a hero, man bun and all, used all of the trendy catchphrases and buzzwords for his podcasts. Baldoni previously hosted a podcast called Man Enough, where he talked about things like gender disparity and toxic masculinity. But here is what is interesting. Johnson has now deleted that post and said he never meant to say anything unkind. He wrote, "Anytime I've said something unkind about someone, I've regretted it. Fortunately, that's almost never, and definitely not when I'm at my best. Regardless if it's true or not, if it's my opinion, even if I'm trying to speak the truth or stand up for someone, it's never good. Even in times where it might feel justified in doing the right thing, it makes no difference. There's a better way." Talking about family, by the way, Baldoni's family is also seemingly standing behind him. His mother and wife showed their support earlier this month as Baldoni celebrated his 41st birthday. Baldoni's wife also appears to be in full support of her husband, Emily Baldoni, posting on Instagram, "Happy birthday, my love, celebrating the man, husband, and father that you are. I choose you again and again." And this was alongside a picture of the two kissing with their children by their side. And his mother, Sharon Baldoni, also posted on Instagram for his birthday, wrote a sweet message, but this part was key, where she wrote, "Justice and truth will shine today and into eternity." Some people would say that's in relation to the current conflict that he's facing, but we don't know for sure. So again, it's interesting to see how different people have different takeaways based on their own personal experiences. But for those of you who do not know Blake Lively or Justin Baldoni, like me, never met them, we're left with the legal documents. We're left with the evidence, and we have been scouring through that, again, to bring you both sides of this legal fight. So it will be interesting to see if people's minds change once more evidence is revealed leading up to and at a future trial, because it's currently scheduled for 2026. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.